Let's make something weird.
Thomas here with Much Props, going to give you another how-to video. Today's build should be interesting to say the least. I am going to throw a bunch of random stuff together using different materials and techniques to hopefully build something that is relatively interesting. That's the game plan. I was surfing on Etsy the other day and I found a maker by the name of Nebula Studios. I'll put links to their stuff down in the description below. They have awesome resin cast stuff, and you know me, I kind of like those resin cast masks. They've got some skull ones on their shop, and I bought a couple of them. They've been sitting in my shop for about a month or so now, and it's pretty typical. I have like 5 or 6 projects usually going at one time to kind of keep the workflow and my interest peaked. I finally got around to pulling it over to the work table behind me, and then I started just pulling random things, old templates that I had made. I started pulling possible details like Cos molds from Evil Ted, FOMO from Cosplay Apprentice, and SKS Props HD Foam. None of these people are sponsors. I've bought all of these things. I just like the fact that in today's world, I had the ability to connect with makers who saw a problem and decided that they were going to offer a product to make things easier for fellow makers, which is awesome. These people are amazing and doing great work, so please, please, please buy their stuff, support them, show them love. I've got a chance to talk to most of them, and the stuff that they do is awesome. I'm just in awe every time I get to say something and they respond. So today we're going to put all those random things together and hopefully make something that looks pretty epic and closely resembles like a weird medieval skull monster mask. It'll make sense probably in the outro. So let's get to building. Like I said in the intro, this is an awesome resin cast that I got from Nebula Studios on Etsy. I'll leave links to their stuff down in the description below the video. I bought a couple of masks they offer in their store, so I will definitely be using some more of these in future videos. So I started with the mask and built out from there, just kind of making it up as I go. Originally I was going to make it into a full mask and was thinking maybe a cyberpunk style, but then decided to grab a jaw piece from the Dina mask I made for Plat Effects Con last year and go a completely different route. I'll make this build into a new template for those interested in trying to put their own take on this one. To fit the mask shape a little better, I made a middle section to make it less pointy. Contact cement all the edges, let them stand for a few minutes, and then tack them together. Once I got it assembled, I could trace the outline of the bottom and make a bottom piece for this mask. I did an outward cut on the bottom piece to give it an angle bevel detail. When I attach foam to resin, I typically use cyanoacrylate, or super glue as I usually call it. I use Gorilla super glue just because it's easily available in my area. Unless Gorilla is listening, then I definitely use it because it's the greatest super glue ever made. I marked this area where it needs to glue up to kind of help me with alignment, and then I tack the two pieces together. It was at this point, looking at the mask for what was probably about an hour, that I decided I was going to make it into a full helmet build. So I grabbed the template from my Draugr build a while back and used that as the base, which, if I remember correctly, is technically a modified version of a Red Knight helmet that I built even further back from Fortnite. It's a nice shape and it fits my head really well. So I cut out the piece from the original template, trace and cut these parts onto my foam and out of my foam. This helmet has some pretty big curves, so I need to do a little heat forming before glue up. Heat up the foam on both sides and push it over a rounded object as it cools. This helps to bring the piece into its final shape, or at least close, and also reduces the pull on the seam lines during glue up, so hopefully less gaps. Contact cement the edges, wait a few minutes, and start tacking pieces together. I like to close the darts first through the large V-shaped cuts in the pattern, then attach the pieces together using the registration marks as a guide. I also like to do each side individually, then glue the halves together down the middle, just so I don't have glue that's drying up on me. I traced the mask onto the helmet to get the position where I wanted it to, and then glue it together. I thought about making it lift up, but quickly talked myself out of that. Trying to figure out the moving components was a little much at the time, so I just went with stationary. Foam to foam, I use contact cement, and resin to foam, once again, I'm using super glue. Here is how I made my vertebrae pieces. I didn't have any plastic ones in my random bins, surprisingly, so I decided to make my own out of some 6mm foam. Sides are mirrored. I cut 2 copies for each piece. I push it down on the table to figure out how it's going to glue up on the helmet. Once the halves were tacked together, I drew out areas I needed to carve, put on a stone bit on my rotary tool, and then got to shaping them. For the front 2 and the very back vertebrae, I carved them a little bit smaller than the rest. An easy way to make an angled trim for detail pieces is to cut an inward 45-degree angle into your foam, flip it over to the other side, and then starting where the slope starts, cut it straight. I made a long piece of trim to mimic the outward bevel on the chin. For an extra detail, I thought it would be cool to work some more skulls into the design. This time maybe some human ones. Got out some Smooth Cast 300 that I have in my closet, and using Evil Ted's skull mold, I began casting. I spray some mold release on my molds and have an extra one ready for the inevitable over measuring of what I actually need. That way I don't waste anything. Smooth Cast 300 is an equal parts A and B resin mix, so put on some gloves, mix them together fully, and then pour it into your molds quickly. It sets up really quick and leaves very little time to mess around. Make sure you read the instructions and follow all the safety regulations and stuff that are on there, because this stuff does create some heat and could burn you, and you don't want to get those things on your skin. I washed off all of the skulls with some isopropyl alcohol to get rid of any of the mold release that was still on there, sanded the backs of each of them, and now I'm ready to glue them on in random positions to the trim. Whatever I do on one side, I just mimic to the other side to keep it symmetrical. To transition between the skulls a little better and to kind of fill in some gaps, I'm going to use some FOMO from Cosplay Apprentice. It's an EVA clay foam that kind of just works like putty. I add a little bit of water to the surface of my helmet for it to stick to, and mix a little bit of water into the foam to make it a little more pliable. I just push it into the cracks and smooth over the top with a wet finger. I also patched a couple of seam lines where it needed a little bit of gap filler, and right behind the cheekbone on the skull there's a gap between it and the jaw, so I plugged that up too. I added some small strips to give another little detail between each of the vertebrae and fill in that dead space on the side of the helmet. Then I took my rotary tool with various bits on it and plunged it into the foam to create recessed rivets. After that, I switched over to a stone bit, tilted it sideways, and used the corner to gouge out battle damage all over the helmet. I hit the resin parts with an automotive spray paint primer, then everything got several coats of Plasti Dip. Usually I leave this part out of videos, but I had several people ask me what I meant by lightly dust the area with silver, brown, and black spray paint, so I figured I'd show you. Around this time of year, I have to spray paint relatively late because it's too hot and humid here in Texas. So while the lighting looks fine at the beginning of this clip, it gets bad. I hold the can about 2 feet or so from the actual helmet and then squeeze out quick little spurts, lightly misting the surface and letting it fall onto the prop. I generally start with silver, make a pass in brown and black, then finish again with silver. It's hard to see and even harder to film, so hopefully this helps or makes at least a little bit of sense. When I face the light and I'm recording, I can't see anything. For the rest of the paint job, I am switching over to a brush and doing it by hand. I get out some Plat-Effects acrylic paint and hit my trim at the bottom, the spine, and the skull teeth in gold. To mix it up a little, I thought it would be interesting to paint the skull red instead of the typical white or dingy yellow. I put down 2 coats of each color to get some good coverage. It doesn't have to be perfect because I'm going to dirty it up here in a minute. Then once I'm happy with it, I put down a clear coat over the top to protect my paint layers. To dirty it up, I sloppily mix a little brown and black, add a wet chip brush to the mix, and then slather that all over the surface of my helmet. Then I wipe off the high points with a paper towel, let the paint really seep down into the cracks and all those details to make them kind of come out. After 2 or 3 passes, I let it dry, and then I hit the gold with a little bit lighter gold and the silver with a little bit lighter silver just on the edges to kind of make some stuff stand out a little more. I also go ahead and hit all the rivets with the lighter colors as well. To prevent people from seeing my face when the helmet is on, I'm gonna hot glue in some fabric. My wife was about to throw away this old pullover that she had, and I thought it was just sheer enough that I could use it for some screens on helmets and masks and stuff, so I took it. I cut out a patch of it and hot glued it inside of the mask, covering all the holes. Now I can call this evil looking helmet officially done. And we are finished. Here is the end result. I think it turned out pretty awesome. I really like the detail here on the bottom, kind of going around the back of the neck with the skulls. I had some plans in mind, and this wasn't at all what I had envisioned initially. I'm kind of one of those people that doesn't really draw it down on a piece of paper. I just go with it when I'm making something off the top of my head. And sometimes I come up with super cool stuff, sometimes not so cool. I thought about putting horns here, putting recesses, and I really brainstormed this area of the helmet for a day or so before I finally settled on just putting some ridges, which I think turned out pretty cool and really kind of tie in with the spine that I have here going with the vertebrae. So, yeah. Maybe you'll try and make something like this yourselves and impress your friends with your ability to pull random stuff and use makers' products so that you can make an amalgamation of something awesome that is terrifying, and at the same time you just want to put it on and walk around with. I don't think they'd appreciate it. Maybe you'll get some.
Yay!
And inevitably they're gonna ask you, how'd you make that? You can give them one of these, tell them much props. The spines, I guess I could hit you with, but I'm just gonna put it on.
Yeah, I kind of feel like a bad guy in this thing, so I'm just gonna go. Peace out.
If you enjoy what I do here on YouTube and want to see me continue to build epic stuff like this, please consider joining these awesome people listed here on my Patreon to make a bigger, better, more creative community.